Okay, despite what purpose that table is made for, that is really cool. I could modify that with my console collection. Okay, yeah, I walked into that one. So during the tail end of Friendship is Magic, rumors about Generation 5 were spread like wildfire. There was speculation going on, debating on who would return and whatnot. But as the show came to an end, bits and pieces were shared from Hasbro until we eventually got what I'm essentially talking about today. My Little Pony: A New Generation. Bringing in some personal baggage, I was very steered away from reviewing any MLP-based movies. Part of which is because I didn't want to risk blurring my content with movie reviews. But considering the amount of categories that I've recently made, fuck it. I can bring in one more category for MLP-based movies. And for the first time ever, I'm going to include a film rating as a condition of when I review movies compared to the usual formula of reviewing My Little Pony content. So with that out of the way, I've been asked to review this movie for a while, and I honestly can't blame any of you. And with that, how the movie holds up turns out to be pretty divisive. Not too surprising there given the extreme reactions the fandom has always had. However, the big pill I had to swallow here is that this movie is very flawed. Questions were left unanswered, having the story take place in the same universe didn't help it apparently, and the message is quite the elephant in the room. As you guessed it when I said I had a huge pill to swallow, I really like this movie. It's fun, it's colorful, and I enjoy the new cast of characters. In explaining so, I'll categorically discuss the setting, the characters, the musicals, a few nitpicks, and then address the elephant in the room with its message and what's left to anticipate for the series. Getting the premise out of the way, we're taking place over a long period after the events of Friendship is Magic. 3 of the known pony races are segregated from each other as they're perceived to be as threats. Except for one, Sunny Star Scout, our main protagonist. Before getting to Sunny herself, however, I should go over the setting so far. To begin with, I'm one of the few people who are okay with having this take place in the same universe. It does raise questions on what happened in the past, and it does feel dismissive of all the progress over the previous generation. However, conflict always happens in our reality. We're not going to get a perfect world all the time. A new conflict of some sort will come over the horizon and you have to be ready for it. So when I heard about this movie taking place in the same universe and how everything allegedly roots back to square one, I wasn't surprised at all. Even then, I don't think the movie would have time to explain all the details of the wheres and whys in the previous events. I know that sounds like a cop-out, but from another perspective, considering that this is aimed towards a new generation, newcomers may not bear that knowledge yet. They would only hear bits and pieces of the previous generation and take things with a pinch of salt. I do hope this gets covered in this series when it airs. But until then, this is a movie that's meant to be on its own merits and not rely too heavily on the previous material. Instead, they're written as a mystery for the said new conflict. Discussing where the characters stand, it's a bit tricky in explaining so. Up until Friendship is Magic, characters were only written as flat and one-dimensional, or they would have a stereotype trait of some sort that any typical girl would be excited for. Friendship is Magic, however, broke that mold by utilizing stereotypes and challenging them. And with that in mind, these new set of characters are very cookie cutter. But I like what they have so far. And personally, I think this was a better decision than working with familiar characters and possibly butchering them. Starting off with is Sunny Star Scout, voiced by Vanessa Hudgens. She's an activist who's so dedicated and wanted to make the world a happier place instead of sitting inside a safety bubble. This is both a strength and weakness to her. She's rash and desperate, trying to fulfill her father's wishes, but it always resulted in having reality crash down on her. There's always that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Sunny has become my favorite character because of this. It's an obstacle that I feel can relate to everyone that wishes things would get better or figure out what to do, only to be slingshot back to square one out of impatience and naivety. And on that note, we have our friend Hitch. Yeah, I can easily tell the writers were influenced by the Sonic movie. Voice actor James Marsden, who played an authority figure in that movie with animals being beside them, plays another authority figure as a pony sheriff of Maritime Bay, who also happens to have animals beside him. He's my second favorite by introducing a lead male protagonist in an arguably female-targeted film. Male characters from Friendship is Magic were written in utter stupidity for plot convenience. For how Hitch is written, he's doing his job ensuring safety, but like Sunny, he also wants to make the world a better place. His approach, however, involves staying inside the safety bubble instead of stepping outside of it. He plays off an obstacle to Sunny by being down to earth with some cynicism behind it. His development ranges from sticking with his old ways to learning to appreciate the other pony raises at Sunny's expense. So he's more than just a first-time male lead role. He's very well-rounded and has quite the charm. Ripped, has a nice smile, and riveting hair. Hey, don't push it. I have a girlfriend. Moving on to the next character is Izzy Moonbow, voiced by Kimiko Glenn. She's the most favored one in the fandom, and I don't really blame anyone since her character is adorably designed with that big fluffy hair. And that she had a tennis ball on her horn. Oh boy, was the fan art all over the place for that. She's often compared to Pinkie Pie due to how zany and goofy she is. However, what makes me appreciate her more is how more restrained she is. She doesn't get in your face, blabbering all the time, or causing any issues at the expense of an oblivious nature. Sure, she does get into trouble, but it's at the expense of her not knowing anything else around her. Additionally, I love how creative she is. Anything she gets her hooves on, and it's fascinating. Making a fake crown, fake horn, and her entire house with various decorations. So not only is she comparable to Pinkie Pie, but I also see a lot of rarity in her. Not into dresses, obviously, but that's what makes Izzy such a great departure. Coming to the Pega side, we have the sisters Zipstorm and Pip Petals from Zephyr Heights, voiced respectively by Liza Koshy and Sophia Carson. Why these two have different last names if they're meant to be sisters is beyond me. Zip has a different motivation that contributes to the main plot, that being wanting to be able to legitimately fly and feel free. However, her mother Queen Haven makes a false narrative to the city that only royals can fly, and it's something Zip is not happy with. It's too restraining for her, and she doesn't want to deal with the delusions of grandeur. She wants more escapism in her life. Through a contrast, we have her sister Pip. She's an online celebrity whose arc ranges from having everything to losing everything. That's a great concept for her as a character where she's obligated to tag along in the hopes that these actions work in her favor by trusting her sister. She could have been written as an angry teenager who was just a brat at everyone's expense, but instead, she's written as someone struggling through trust, and she's worried about her mother. Unfortunately, that's as far as I can go with her as she's underused. Pip's only contribution in the narrative was guiding everyone out of Zephyr Heights when the panic ensued, and when Sunny is struggling to compete in a dancing game.
Hey, you hear that, Sunny? Feel the rhythm take you over. You feeling it? Oh, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. Yeah, you are, Sunny.
Pip should have stepped in to compete in the dancing game. This especially shines on her choreography skills considering her performance in Glowing Up. Hell, even include a moment where Zip assists her as a sister. It would make a lot more sense to have Zip tell Pip to feel the rhythm compared to Pip telling Sunny to feel the rhythm. But despite being incredibly underused, I hope that she gets more development over the course of the show when it launches. On the contrary, I can't say much positively about Sprout voiced by Kem Jeong. Unlike the 5 main characters, he's extremely annoying. I presume that's the idea for the sake of making an antagonist, but there's more to making one than just sheer annoyance. They could be cunning, endearing, and show some charisma to the audience. Sprout lacks all of that and is the result of a man-child who has man-childish behaviors. Some could argue that it's because he's accustomed to being close to his mother Phyllis, and most of the plot revolves around her convincing him into everything that eventually backfires on her end. However, that doesn't excuse how annoying he is. To its credit, every once in a while a bit of slapstick kicks in.
Citizens!
Legit, I almost spat my coffee out laughing at this. Perfect timing. In regards to his mother Phyllis, I don't take nearly as much of an issue. What makes me tolerate her better is that there are moments that she utterly regrets. A good chunk of this was hinted at the beginning of the movie when Sunny was caught in a near-freak accident at the Cantrologic presentation. The moment Sunny's hooves were caught in a bind, I thought Phyllis was scheming to catch her because of the amount of time she interfered before. But instead, she's expressed more concern by telling the machines to be shut off. A lot of this is shown after how overpowering Sprout acts to everyone and nearly risks her life to get him to shut off a giant threatening machine. Do they excuse her actions and what she did to Sprout? Of course not. She even backpedals at the end of the film when she was asked by Sprout about his task in being a sheriff. But I saw a lot of progress from her being stuck in her old ways to, oh shit, I went too far with my kid. So comparatively, I liked her more as an antagonist than I did with Sprout. Never thought I'd give credit to a Karen before. At least she's better than Amber Gillis. The next character along with the setting is Alpha Biddle, as he's in control of Bridalwood, a village forest where unicorns live. Compared to other locations, these guys live off of superstition, where it's like magic trigger them into a state of performing rituals as if they're trying to wear off any jinx. As ridiculous as that sounds, it does get pretty funny, especially when they react to the word mayonnaise. However, with them having no magic, they feel completely helpless. They haven't adjusted to figuring out any alternative abilities. It's almost depressing to look at. I mean, sheesh, not even Fizzlebot Berry Twist had this big of a problem. That's just her nickname. With the regard of Alpha Biddle, I'm pretty bitter about him. I don't dislike him as a character like I did with Sprout, mind you, but a big part of him does annoy me sometimes. He has an aggressive nature whenever things don't go his way. Other times, he gambles and takes advantage of his own people when he's run out of shop. And in terms of sportsmanship, he really hits rock bottom.
Give me the crystal.
But I won.
You tricked me.
Buddy, what do you mean she tricked you? Because she disguised herself as a unicorn? That doesn't change the fact that you lost to her in just prance. If anything, you tricked her into playing that instead of sticking with a Rubik's Cube and didn't let her warm up at first. You took advantage of her rookie mistakes. Unicorn or not, she still beat your ass fair and square. This is what I mean when I say how bitter I am about him. He's not a horribly written character. It's obvious that he plays his role into the wrongful actions along with Queen Haven and Phyllis. But compared to all three of them, I found him the least enjoyable. Hell, his contributions are hardly applicable. Outside of gambling, he's almost lazy running a shop of an entire village. Granted, that's also the case with the said village itself and how lifeless they act towards each other. It's the result of him being complacent with everyone else to the point where he enables the superstition that he gets himself wrapped up in. I guess that's karma, but I don't find him as endearing as the other two leaders are, since they have something carried under the theme of the movie. So diving into the musicals, they share mostly pop-themed tracks that are a hit and miss. They certainly do their job at being enjoyable to listen to, but each one unfortunately comes with a caveat. Starting off with is Gonna Be My Day from Sunny when she rollerblades through Maritime Bay. It's adorable and puts a grin on my face as it explores Sunny's naivety. So far, it's become my favorite track with very little for me to criticize. It serves as its opening segment that sets up the main plot of the film. Another one of my favorites is Looking Out For You when Sunny and Izzy start their journey. It's simple, if on the nose, based on the title itself, sharing trust with each other. It's cute, it has a nice upbeat feel that excites what lies ahead. Personally, I imagine this being a great karaoke song with whoever you want to sing with. Compared to many other songs out there, I don't have much to say other than it's just a tune that you would have to hear for yourself. Following up with two songs back to back, both are generic in their writing and don't really offer much. That being Glowing Up and It's Alright. The songs aren't bad, in fact they're very fun to listen to on their own terms, but they're definitely weaker compared to the previously mentioned songs because they don't contribute to its narrative as much. To give credit, they're montaged at the right time. Glowing Up, for instance, is played during a hijinks where Sunny and Izzy are taking Queen Haven's crown. Along with that, it has a nice catchy beat that even gets satirized by a moment when Hitch attempts to wing through the song when he's caught under a spotlight. Side note here, this actually got me laughing my ass off. I normally would cringe and face the other way like what happened with Spike during the Cloudsdale anthem in Equestria games. The major difference is, this happened faster and Hitch would embrace the beat off screen at points, thereby making the possible thought of having backfiring less of an issue. I mean, if I was in Hitch's shoes at that point, I would piss myself in stage fright. Arguably, this was a cringe scene done much better because it didn't overstay its welcome compared to, oh god, this is going to suck. Oh god, this is slowly happening, this is going on forever, please shoot me and end my misery. But I digress. Glowing Up became the movie's end credits for the soundtrack, and it definitely does its job being the song for little girls to jam to. Unfortunately, I can't say much with It's Alright. Just by the title alone, you can tell this was such an afterthought of a song. Aside from the verses, which are nothing more than preparing a duel, the chorus is extremely lackluster as they use the most dated lyric cliches that even the classic rock era regrets, the Nas and the Alrights. They were used so often that even their own songs were named by them, All Right Now by Free and the ending segment of Loving, Touching, Squeezing by Journey. Also, this may sound crazy here, but tell me if this sounds close to another song ever since I heard this one.
It's alright, 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 right, right. Na 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 na.
That's right. The song It's Alright sounds extremely identical to the opening song to Nickelodeon's Clarissa Explains It All. Aside from the nods and the alrights, they're both in the same key, B major, and share a similar beat per measure. The big difference is that Clarissa's opening track flows with the theme of non-stop interruption when she tries to introduce herself, as if everyone else is all endless chatter and she's just had enough, hence the tone. But It's Alright is such an afterthought and it lands as my least favorite track thus far. Coming to the last two, I'm pretty challenged with them because of how harsh their caveats come to. The first is Fit Right In, which has a nice happy melody going for it, and for the most part, I really dig it. It's a nice song about how important it is to set aside differences for the better. Granted, that's the major theme of the movie, but it nonetheless puts a dumb grin on my face. Izzy Singer really plays up the antics with pure skill and talent. I would have ranked this up there with my other favorites, if not for this.
Oh, unicorn horn!
No, God!
Ugh, you had to introduce a hip-hop segment. No shame whatsoever. After my criticisms on the Pinky rap and testing 1, 2, 3, I admittedly wasn't clear on what my issue was. I stated that it was pointless, which was very untrue. The problem I have with both this and Pinky's rap is that it's so stereotypical it's insulting. Honestly, this one's worse because everyone in the song is aware of it, wearing the Kanye West glasses and crossing their arms trying to be cool and hip, trying to scream, yo, yo, check me out. It's not cute, it's not clever, it's annoying. It's trying too hard. It's embarrassing. A lot of modern media has a really bad habit of doing this, and most of the time, they never learn. And here, after how jolly and happy the song was, this segment just ruins the flow so badly. When it comes to hip-hop, they aim for a heavier subject matter. For a song about fitting in, this one sure shit doesn't do justice. Now, given how critical I've been with this and Pinky's rap, I want to make it clear that I don't hate hip-hop in general. I love the earlier works of Eminem. Lose Yourself is a fucking masterpiece. We Made It by Busta Rhymes is one of my favorite songs to listen to every once in a while. I have a heavy appreciation for Ludacris's Runaway Love as it tackles on domestic abuse, and I can't gush enough on how genius Hamilton is. But most modern media has a wrong way of approaching it, as if they don't understand or bother to do research before throwing something in. But hey, why do that when money is all you care about, studios? Speaking of Hamilton, the composer Lin-Manuel Miranda had a workaround that demonstrates how hip-hop can be used the right way in children's media, and it was when he wrote the music for Disney's Moana. The song You're Welcome had a hip-hop segment where Maui bragged about his accomplishments, and it worked beautifully with the tropical beat the song stuck with, and staying true to the upbeat tone. It wasn't dramatically changed to, yo, yo, we're going hip-hop, yo. It was using the same mannerisms as the song did. That is how you work hip-hop with musicals without butchering the tone of the song. That being said, everything else in the song is fine. It's just that segment that I found myself muting until I see it end. Finally, we have what is essentially everyone else's favorite song in the movie, Angry Mob. And not trying to make a hot take here, but I really couldn't find myself liking this one. I know that a lot of people are going to be mad at me by saying that, but let me be forward here. This isn't a bad song. It certainly did better than It's Alright. But I did have some issues with it. Upon explaining so, let's get the obvious out of the way. Yep, that comparison has been mentioned multiple times, though I wanted to address it from a different side on this. Having a rock musical is something I always like to welcome. Gonna Be My Day has a bit of a rock feel, but geared more towards as a pop rock track. Other times there were songs like In the Dark of the Night from Anastasia, which was fantastic in and of itself. Hearing it to this day, that song still gives me goosebumps and a significant threat coming underway, as a villain song should. That being said, using pre-existing songs to represent the anger portrayed in this movie is what I took issue with. Angry Mob itself is played up in a very goofy and self-aware manner, going as far as to dig up a last-minute rhyme like Rob, and having characters act like a stage performance compared to how a character is expressing themselves. It was so focused on being a parody that I didn't feel any sort of threat or tension behind it. I couldn't take any of this seriously. It also didn't help that there were so many shots of Sprout being up close to my face. I almost wanted to slap the screen every time, knowing full well I couldn't hit Sprout, getting him to back off. Now, I want to emphasize that I'm not stating the song is bad. Its structure on its own, it's fine, and it has its intentions of building up something for its climax. I just couldn't enjoy it as much as everyone else has. Considering that anyone could blow this out of proportion, this is just an extra reminder so that you don't explode on me. So finally coming to the flaws in the movie, and the elephant in the room that I have to address, there's a few minor nitpicks I want to get out of the way first, particularly the animation. During the opening song, we see Sunny grabbing a hold of a train with her hoof while she was wearing her roller skates. Other times, hooves alone have a way of holding something. The only possible guess that I have is that they're suction cups. That's always been questionable, even in Friendship is Magic. But what bothers me a lot is, how is she holding the train with her roller skates on? Are the blades suction cups too? Is the bolt on the train a magnet? For that matter, how was she able to make a balloon for a cult during the song or place stickers everywhere very quickly with the roller skates off? It's also worth noting that the sky in the background becomes briefly static in this shot in the last few seconds, thus making the sense of depth disorienting for a brief second. I guess this is just an oversight from the animators. Speaking of, during the crown heist, Zip tries to take the crown from the winged dog before it is broken in half. Somehow Zip had the crown side when she originally tugged it from the crystal end in the first place. This sudden switcheroo between the crown and the crystal felt so inconsistent, and preferably, it would have made sense to have the dog hold the crystal side instead so that the scene would occur naturally. Like I said, these are just nitpicks. The way hooves are able to hold on to things is just a part of a cartoon, and it's been around since the entirety of the franchise. So, that being said, what is the movie's message? Learning that differences can be put aside and respect who they are? If your answer is yes, I don't blame any of you. Arguably, this is a message that has been beaten to death to the audience to where they say, yeah, I get it, racism is bad, and we shouldn't be judging others over their differences. It's also worth noting that the story is looked at as being very formulated by using the road trip story, which was very commonly used in several animated movies these days. A character embarks on an adventure, makes friends along the way, and stumbles upon an important artifact that plays a role in its narrative. And the very fact that this movie was tackling on racism is a case of been there and done that from Season 8 in Friendship is Magic. On top of all this, Sunny was written as someone who was morally in the right the whole time, to where she allegedly doesn't learn anything new and has been seen to have no development at all because of that. Kind of reminds me of something else.
I didn't learn anything. I was right all along.
However, despite these glaring flaws compared to what I took issue with, here's where I stand on the message and why Sunny is still my favorite character so far in the movie. Yes, Sunny was morally in the right, and she was the one to embark on a journey to help prove others on what she knows of. Whenever it comes to being right and tossed aside because of what the environment is conditioned to, it becomes an internal struggle in and of itself. Finding any options necessary is sometimes a gamble, and we see that with Sunny as she becomes rash and desperate, resulted in a huge backfire to her. As a filly, she drags Hitch in an argument with Sprout over how the three pony races used to get together and gets turned down. As an adult, she vandalizes a few things at Maritime Bay by placing stickers everywhere, drawn on a poster, and sabotaging Phyllis's Cantrologic presentation. And as a result, she gets hurt, she gets humiliated, and she's later scolded by Hitch afterwards. When befriending Izzy and Zip, she participates in a heist to steal Queen Haven's crown to retrieve a crystal. And after winning the second one, the crystal still wouldn't work as she and Izzy pieced them together. Even with the third crystal that she was lucky to find, it still didn't work in her favor. But the thing that she never backed away from was exploring new territory. During the beginning of the movie, she never took that upon herself, and when she did when meeting Izzy, she saw that everyone else had the same issue. This is what I meant when I said she was someone who would be willing to step out of a safety bubble, thus getting everyone to listen to her at the end when everyone else has not only exhausted themselves of their wrongdoings, but help each other out in a dire situation, more than proving something other than just racism. Season 8 of Friendship is Magic subjugated to racism on the count of status quo, that it's just a regulation that elders were conditioned to and has become outdated. A similar thing can be said with Zootopia, which has periodically been compared to, except that one was more relegated to spite and hatred because of the said status quo and how everybody else approached it. A New Generation, however, was relegated to fear. Over the course of the movie, there were rumors of what each race has a negative connotation of. Earth ponies were looked at as smelly dumb creatures, Pegasi were looked at as brutes who would fly and snatch you, and unicorns were looked at as monsters who would zap you. These were constantly looked at as some sort of threat and harm. but as everyone encounters each other, they had nothing to fear except fear itself. This was the obstacle that Sunny was faced with whenever she stumbled upon a different race. She learned that this is a common issue with everyone and not just her own. And as a result, the way I see Sunny's character, if there was anything she needed to learn, it was practice what she could preach. All this time, she's been screwing up, finding an answer to prove everyone wrong, and resulting in committing wrongdoings in the process. After finally speaking up about it to everyone of every race, her biggest accomplishment for it was identifying with everyone's common issue. That's what I enjoyed about Sunny's character. She's someone who saw things differently and needed to figure out what needed to be done. It wasn't just about her proving how right she was. It was about how she was willing to take part in whatever corruption there was she was faced with. Is it beaten to death? Sure, but I'd rather have a good message be beaten in instead of having a bad message be placed in, like what some episodes of Friendship is Magic did. That's also why I didn't take issue with how formulated the movie was. Road trip formulas have been around much longer than what everyone else has seen, albeit they've been done in different ways, but whenever it comes to this formula, it creates a sense of adventure instead of being stuck in one place. Making new friends is always a benefit, and having an artifact that contributes to its narrative has been an act of responsibility that encourages development. That's not to say that can go horribly wrong, but with the new generation, they played it safe, and personally, I think that was appropriate since the primary step was to introduce a new set of characters before the series can take any risks. By then, we may get answers as to what happened with the 3 pony races and what got everyone separated to begin with, or anything between generations. Something I will take issue with, however, is Sunny getting the Alicorn features at the end of the movie. While she was trying to get everyone to see a different view of each other and not let fear cloud the facts, this feels way too early on given that this is the pilot to the next gen show. In Friendship is Magic, Twilight got her wings in the finale of Season 3. It still felt early on since there would be more seasons later down the line, and it was perceived that her being an Alicorn would be a part of a series finale. But here, I didn't see how giving the wings and a horn to Sunny was appropriate. The only possible guess I have here is that with her trying to prove everyone else, the crystals may have a subconsciousness and trust her immediately, and it has been said that it's a temporary effect. And I don't know whether or not this would be used more often. Even then, it's just jumping the shark and it just feels too unnatural at this point. All things considered, I still enjoyed watching this movie. It's not spectacular by any means, it wasn't even one of my favorite movies of 2021. Some of the characters were underused and some were focused a little too much, but they were fun to hang around with regardless. Except for Sprout and Alphabettle. I wasn't a fan of most of the songs, but they weren't horrible. The story has a lot of questions from the perspective of a longtime fan, and there was a lot of room for improvement to build on its own. But it did what it needed to do. The best way I would recommend this movie is not dwell too much on what Friendship is Magic brought forth. See it from the perspective of a newcomer who has bared no knowledge, and take any references with a pinch of salt. And even then, any questions you would have, just keep it to a bare minimum. A movie can only explain so much detail. Hopefully the series will answer a lot of questions, but for what it is, I'll leave A New Generation with 3.5 stars. So I know that some of you will not agree with me given that there are those who don't like the movie. If you don't like it, that's your choice. Until next time, this is GoldenFox, and I need some water. This was a really big review. Also, mayonnaise. Have fun.